so I'm going to do something very different than usual. I'm just going to read Lord of the Rings to you. No joke, I'm going to read the book. There will be some security in there as well, but this is just an excuse to read the book, and I knew Michael loves Lord of the Rings, so easy. All right, now, before I begin, I should point out that, and this was quite hard for me to take, but some of my good friends haven't read the book or seen the movies. I know, I was shocked. It took me a while. But just a spoiler warning, for those who haven't read the book or seen the movies and don't want to be spoiled, I will be mentioning some things about what happens in the Two Towers. I'm trying to limit what spoilers I share, but I won't be offended if you want to leave in order to not get spoilers. But just wanted to cover that first. Now, before we get into it, to explain where we are and what's going on, because there's a whole bunch of crazy and strange names. First of all, Lord of the Rings, it's one book. It's not a trilogy. It's not 3 books. It's one book. It's in 3 parts, because Tolkien, he wanted to publish a single book. Publisher said, are you nuts? The book is gigantic. No one's going to buy it. It's going to be too expensive. So they broke it into 3. It's 3 volumes. You've got The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King. Now, so each volume is, confusingly, 2 books. It's in 2 parts. So I'm going to be reading from Book 3, which is the first part of Two Towers, which is Volume 2 of The Lord of the Rings. I'm going to read from Chapter 7, Helm's Deep. So, now what's going on here is Aragorn and his friends, Legolas and Gimli, have arrived in Rohan, where the Horse Lords live, and they've gone up to Edoras, where King Théoden and Éomer are, and they've convinced them that there is an army coming to destroy them, the army of the evil wizard Saruman. So they've convinced the king and his men, and all the people, to retreat to the mountains, to a place called Helm's Deep, where the Hornburg, which is the fortress, is. So all the people of Rohan are retreating to the fortress, and that's basically all you really need to know for us to pick this up. So let me start reading. So on my edition, it's page 528, if you're following along. Keep in mind, this is the Lux illustrated by the author edition, so you probably don't have it. But if you do, that's where you'll find it. So here we go. Still some miles away, on the far side of the Westfold Vale, oops, next slide, there we go, a great bay in the mountains lay a green combe, out of which a gorge opened in the hills. Men of that land called it Helm's Deep, after a hero of old wars who had made his refuge there. Ever steeper and narrower it wound inward from the north. So, the fortress of the Hornburg, which is called Helm's Deep, also, the names are confusing, he uses multiple names for everything, by the way. So it's in a big valley. So when you're defending it from an army, this is where you want to go, because they have to come into the valley, so there's a single way in. So rather than being surrounded completely in your fortress or wherever it is you are, you only have to defend from one area, because they have to go into the valley. The mountains are so big, which gives a fantastic defensive ability for the people, because, as I said, they don't defend one area. So if we apply that to security, what we're talking about here is using trusted infrastructure. So when you've got your application, you want to host it on infrastructure that you trust, so you don't have to worry about the security of the infrastructure. If you don't have to manage servers, then throw it on managed provider, Forge or Cloud or something like that, because then you don't have to worry about that level. You can just worry about your application. If you can manage servers, then maybe go DigitalOcean, AWS, or one of those other providers, and you can manage the server yourself. But the point is, pick a provider that you trust, a provider that has good service and values security, to keep that part of your application safe, so you don't have to worry about it. All right, I'll keep reading. At Helm's Gate, before the mouth of the deep, oops, keep forgetting to turn slides. At Helm's Gate, before the mouth of the deep, there was a heel of rock thrust outward by the northern cliff. There upon its spur stood high walls of ancient stone, and within them was a lofty tower. All right, so the fortress, the Hornburg, is sitting on a big rock spur, big gigantic rock. So defending this fortress is going to be easier because it's up high. If you're a Star Wars fan, this is your high ground. It's nice and high, hard to get to, you put big walls on top of it. Attacking this thing is going to be difficult. And the tower on top of it, oops, sorry, I'm jumping ahead. All right. Yes, so the rock spur, right? You put your fortress on top of it, nice secure grounding for your fortress. Apply this to security, and you've got using secure defaults. So when you build your application, use a framework that has secure defaults. Laravel, most of us here are Laravel developers. It comes with pretty good security. But there are also things you should be enabling. And so by default, when you build an application, it's secure absolutely everything. Set all the defaults to security, secure everything, and then as you need to open things, open them then. Don't just start building and worry about security later, because then you have to figure out all the different places you have to defend, and it takes forever. Instead, set everything as secure, open the things you need to, and it'll make it much easier and give you a solid basis. It's like building the fortress on the big rock. It's just going to make it harder to attack. All right, so the Hornburg is sitting on top of the rock. Where was it? Yes, and from the Hornburg to the other side of the valley in there is a gigantic wall. A wall too, the men of old had made from the Hornburg to the southern cliff, barring the entrance to the gorge. Okay, so we'll come back to these later. There's a bit more description about the wall, so we'll explain them a bit more. There in the Hornburg at Helm's gate, Erkenbrand, master of Westfold, on the borders of the mark now dwelt. As the days darkened with threat of war, being wise, he'd repaired the wall and made the fastness strong. So this fortress is well maintained. The guy that lives there, Erkenbrand, looks after it. It's well stocked, the walls are strong. This is exactly what you need when an army is coming to destroy your people. You need somewhere to go that you don't have to worry about walls falling down or anything like that. It's going to work. It's going to do its job. And when you're building applications, you need to keep on top of your updates and patches. And I say this every time I get on stage anywhere, always do updates and patches because they always get forgotten. It's so easy to put them off. But if there are vulnerabilities in any of the packages and things that you use, of any part of your application, and there's an update waiting to be applied that you haven't done, then you're vulnerable and an attacker's going to find it and use it. So keep your application well maintained, do your updates, do your patches, so that if someone comes along trying to break into it, you're ready and you're prepared and you don't have vulnerabilities lying around. Okay, cool. So now, as I said, they're retreating to the Hornburgs. They haven't got there yet, but there's more behind the fortress and the wall, which AMR explains. There are caves in Helm's Deep where hundreds may lay hid, and secret ways led hence up to the hills. So at the back of this valley, behind the wall, behind the fortress, there are what's called the glittering caves, and behind them are escape routes. So this is where the people are going to hide, because the fortress isn't big enough to hold all of the people of Rohan, but the caves are massive, and so the people can go hide in the caves. And the benefit of the caves is you've got a gigantic mountain on top of you, and probably a very small entrance. So if an attacking army is trying to destroy you, they have a very limited way to get in, and it's quite easy for a small number of people to defend a small opening in caves than an army to try and attack them. So it gives them fantastic defensive abilities. But also, there are escape routes at the back. So even if the attackers want to block up the entrance and just sit and wait for a year for them to come out, people can be escaping out the back and go find someone else to hide, go get help, which is really important. You don't want to be boxed in and have nowhere to go. So you need an escape route, but you need somewhere to go that's going to protect you. And this is a pretty obvious one when it comes to security. You need to keep backups. If you don't have a backup and something happens to your production server or your production database, you might as well just walk out the door and get a new job. Like, there's no point continuing because you don't have anything anymore. Your customer data is gone. So you need reliable backups. But it's not just a case of installing a backup software and hoping that it'll work and coming back to it later. You need to test it. You need to know how to restore from it. You need to have proved that it works. And this is where incident response plans come in as well. You need to know how to restore your entire environment if something goes wrong. Because if a hacker comes along and decides to have some fun and just goes rm-rf and nukes your whole server, what are you going to do? How are you going to restore it? For a lot of people, deploying a new server means you SSH into the existing server, go through the configuration files and copy-paste. But if you don't have the existing server, you can't copy-paste from. And say it's 3 a.m., your entire production environment has gone down, your boss is here, your boss's boss is here, they're getting phone calls from all the shareholders and customers, and everyone's angry and tired and grumpy. How are you going to restore things if you've never tested your backups and don't know how many of it works? But if you've got an incident response plan, you just pull it out of your drawer, put it on your desk, step 1, breathe. Okay, step 2, log into the backup system here using the credentials here. Step 3, blah, blah, blah. You follow the process. If you have a reliable plan that works, a plan that you've tested that you know works, when something goes wrong, you can just follow the plan. And the plan will restore production because that's the entire point of the plan. But if you don't have the plan or if you don't have backups and something bad goes wrong, as I said, you walk out the door, you find a new job, and you hope no one remembers your name. And also, as developers, like how many of us have accidentally deleted something in production we shouldn't have deleted and then restored from backups? Because I guarantee it's most of you, and if you haven't done it, you haven't done it yet. Like, it's what we as developers do. It's the old joke of you become a senior developer when you nuke the production database. It's just what happens. All right, so as we're moving on now. As I said before, we come back to the Hornburg and the wall, and here we go. So actually, before we get to that, we're coming to Helm's Dike. Right, so the people have almost arrived, but before they can get to the fortress, they have to get through Helm's Dike, which is a trench and rampart near the entrance to the valley. The king and his riders passed on. Before the causeway that crossed the stream, they dismounted. In a long file, they led their horses up the ramp and passed within the gates of the Hornburg. There they were welcomed again with joy and renewed hope, for now there were men enough to man both the berg and the barrier wall. All right, so Helm's Dike, trench and rampart. The point of this isn't the last ditch. This isn't where you stop people and you have your last ditch fight. This slows down attackers, makes it harder for them to get to your fortress, and just gives you a good sense of security, but it's not the be-all and end-all. And so when you've got a big army coming in, they've got to get their machines through the trench over the rampart. Even if there's a big gap in the middle, they've still got to get through there. And if we relate this to security, this is our rate limiting. This is our DDoS protection. Because the point of rate limiting isn't to stop all attacks. It's to slow down attacks. It's to make complicated automated attacks and low-effort attacks harder to do. And DDoS protection, it's to stop low-effort DDoS attacks. It's to stop someone trying to take down your server by coming in protection. So put your site behind Cloudflare or another sort of WAF, whatever you want to use. So these are slowing down attackers, making it harder, and they have to do more sophisticated attacks. Because if an attacker can't just rock up and do a credential stuffing attack, they've got to target individual users instead. So it's an important thing to have, but it's not the ultimate solution. You can't just implement these things and be done with your security. But you need to have rate limiting. You need to have it on your logins, your APIs, anything that uses resources that could be abused in some way. You've got to have it there. But it's not the ultimate solution to all of your problems. All right. I realized I read the wrong bit. I'm sorry. Let me explain the Dike, because I think I read the bit about the Hornburg. They need not fly much further, said Amer. Not far ahead now lies Helm's Dike. There we go. An ancient trench and rampart scored across the Coombe, 2 furlongs below Helm's Gate. There we can turn and give battle. Nay, we are too few to defend the Dike, said Thaden. It is a mile long or more, and the breach in it is wide. See, that makes more sense, doesn't it? Yeah, sorry about that. All right, yeah, so as I said, big trench and rampart, there's a gap in the middle, but it's going to take time to get through. And now we get to the Hornburg. So, I read that bit before, so that's the Hornburg. Big fortress on the rock, and there's a causeway to get up to it. So it's hard to get to, big gates, hard to assault, very well defended. And connected to it, we have the deeping wall. So the deeping wall was 20 feet high and so thick that 4 men could walk abreast along the top, sheltered by a parapet over which only a tall man could look. Here and there were clefts in the stone through which men could shoot. This battlement could be reached by a stair running down from the door to the outer court of the Hornburg. 3 flights of steps led also up to the wall from the deep behind. But the front of it was smooth, and the great stones in it were set with such skill that no foothold could be found in their joints. And at the top they hung over like a sea-delved cliff. All right, so that wall is going to be tough to get into. The thing is sheer. It's impossible to climb. It has an overhang. The arches up the top are well defended. You really can't get into this wall. It's a really good defense. And the Hornburg, as I said, sitting up on its rock with the causeway, getting an army up there is difficult. It's going to be really hard to get into. So these are some fantastic defenses. So we start with the wall and security. The wall is multi-factor authentication as far as I'm concerned, because it's not just some simple little gate. You can't just rock up with the sword or like some passphrase and get through. To get through this wall, you need to bring equipment with you. You've got to bring a ladder, siege engines, an entire army. It's a really tough thing. And this is the point of multi-factor authentication. Because if you can steal someone's password and rock up to your application, you can get into their account. But if they have multi-factor authentication and you steal their password, you can't do anything because you need something else as well. You need a more sophisticated attack. And so you can't do big credential stuffing attacks where you try thousands of different accounts to try passwords, because you need to individually target every single person to steal their tokens as well. And this is why multi-factor authentication is so important, is because when someone is trying to compromise accounts, they can only get so far. And you switch from a basic attack of using stolen username and passwords to sophisticated attacks specifically targeting people in order to get their tokens. And tokens can be things like apps on the phone or SMS messages or physical YubiKeys and that sort of thing, and each have their own complexities, but they make the attacks harder. So by having multi-factor authentication, it gives you more protection. And the Hornburg, well, that's authorization. You've got big walls, the big gates, there are multiple layers in it. This is where the king is. His guards are going to be there. And so it's even harder to get in there, and once you get in there, you've got to keep fighting. And authorization is all about ensuring the user can only do what they're supposed to be doing. So every time the user tries to do anything or access anything, you check if they're actually allowed to do it. Do they have authorization to access that resource? Can they manipulate that resource? Can they go there? Can they go here? Authorization is important. In fact, I would say it's essential. You need it to make sure your users are only doing what they're allowed to do. The other thing about the Hornburg is it's big and tall and it overlooks everything. So it's your monitoring and your logging. You need to know what your attackers are doing. If you can't see what they're doing, you can't defend against an attack. If you don't know that your user accounts are being attacked, that someone is trying to do a brute force or credential stuffing attack, you can't put measures in place. You can't increase rate limiting or anything like that. But if you can see there's a whole lot of requests on a login form, then you can tweak your rules and things. You can do lockdown tools, all sorts of things like that in order to stop an attack. But you need to know what's going on. And the same thing if you've got resource-intensive parts of your application, then you need monitoring and logging to see how those resources are being used. Otherwise, your server might fall over and you don't know why. Maybe it's just because one part of the application is using a lot of resources, or someone's found a way to abuse it. Maybe they want to disrupt your application, take it down, and they've found if they upload a certain file in a certain spot, the thing's just going to crash. If you don't have logging, you don't know what's causing that. But if you have logging and monitoring, you can see the route that it's happening in, which user's doing it, you can join the dots and solve the problem. And then you know what you're doing and how to defend against it. Okay, so the people have gotten into the fortress, they're all safe behind the walls, and then the army arrives. And so the attack begins. Now the walls are holding, the fortress is holding, everything is going well so far, but there's a lot of them, and eventually they get a battering ram up to the main gates. And the problem is the gates are taking a beating. The gates are taking a beating and they're beginning to fail, and so something needs to happen. And so Aragon and AMR go out to help. There was a small postern door that opened in an angle on the Berg wall on the west, where the cliff stretched out to meet it. On that side, a narrow path ran towards the great gate between the wall and the sheer brink of the rock. Together, AMR and Aragon sprang through the door, their men close behind. The two swords flashed from a sheath as one. Dismayed, the rammers let fall the trees and turned to fight, but the wall of their shields was broken as by a lightning stroke, and they were swept away, hewn down or cast over the rock into the stony stream below. The orc archers shot wildly and then fled. So, for those who don't know, the postern door is a small door around from the main gates. The idea is defenders can use it to get out without letting attackers in. And so Aragon and AMR have gone out the little side door, round, and they've attacked the attackers with the battering rams to stop them and give the reprieve for the defenders on the gates. And the postern door, it's hard to reach, it's around a little rock wall, and so it's a thing that the attackers can't really get to, can't really attack, which makes it perfect for this sort of thing and allows to, as I said, to prevent this sort of attack. So this can be related to your admin tools and your maintenance tools in the sense that you need to keep them protected and keep them separate. Because if an attacker can find where your admin tools are, then they can start attacking them and try and get into them, or even just stumble upon them. But if you put them separately, if you say put them behind a VPN or IP block, a firewall, somewhere else, different subdomain, different domain, if you can hide these tools and make them harder for an attacker to find, they're less likely to find them and it makes it harder for them to attack them as well, rather than they can just compromise an account and then escalate internally in the system. So you need to look after these tools and make them separate so you can keep using them during an attack, and it makes it harder for them to be attacked in general. All right, so Aragon says, "We did not come too soon," said Aragon, looking at the gates. "Their great hinges and iron bars are wrenched and bent. Many of their timbers were cracked. The doors will not withstand another such battering. Yet we cannot stay here beyond the walls to defend them," said AMR. "Look." He pointed to the causeway. Already a great press of the orcs and men were gathering again beyond the stream. Arrows whined and skipped on the stones about them. "Come, we must get back and see what we can do to pile stones and beam across the gates within. Come now." So the gates are almost broken. So they've stopped the attack for now, but there is more attack coming. There is another battering ram. So what they need to do is pile stones and barricades and woods and beams, everything else they can behind the gates to make them hold in order to reinforce them and make the attack, you make it harder for them to try and break down the door. And this is where you get lockdown tools. If you can see an attack is going on in your application, if user accounts are being compromised or being attacked, if resources are being abused, then you need a way to prevent or slow down or halt these things. So if you can see a user account has been abused, well, you can lock the user out and then reach out to the user separately and to work with them to recover their account. If you can see that resources in a certain part of your application are being used, then you can add more rate limiting or maybe disable it or do things like that. If you have the tools. If you have implemented the lockdown tools ahead of time, then when your application is being attacked or abused, you can use them to defend and slow down and just prevent attacks. If you don't have lockdown tools and you're under an attack, there's not a huge amount of things you can do without hurriedly running some code and hope you can fix something. And if you don't have logging and monitoring and you're being attacked, well, lockdown tools are useless. So you need your logging and monitoring as well as your lockdown tools in order to detect attacks and then prevent them. All right, so they've reinforced the door. The attack is still ongoing. And it seems it's like, they're still holding, the walls are holding, but there are a lot of orcs coming. There's a lot of the army attacking them. And then, even as they spoke, there came a blare of trumpets. Then there was a crash and a flash of flame and smoke. The waters of the deeping stream poured out hissing and foaming. They were choked no longer. A gaping hole was blasted in the wall. A host of dark shapes poured in. "Devilry of Saruman," cried Aragorn. "They have crept into the culvert again while we talked, and they have lit the fire of Orthanc beneath our feet. Elendil, he shouted as he leapt down into the breach. But even as he did so, 100 ladders were raised against the battlements. Over the wall and under the wall, the last assault came sweeping like a dark wave upon the sand. The defense was swept away." Things are not looking good. There is a gigantic hole in the wall. The attackers have made it in. So the defenders, some of them retreat into the caves and barricade that up. Some of them retreat into the fortress and hold off the attacks there. But things are not looking good. However, dawn is coming, and the defenders realize this. Although the Uruk-hai can survive in the sunlight, they don't like it. And the attacking army doesn't like it. And dawn changes things. The light is coming. And so they decide they're going to do something. The dawn is coming. They're going to do something, and they blow the horn of the Helm Hammerhand. Even as they spoke, there came a blare of trumpets. Then there was a crash and a flash of... I forgot to turn the page. Give me a sec. I'm ruining the mood here. Here we go. Okay, here we go. And then, sudden and terrible, from the tower above, the sound of the great horn of Helm rang out. That's better. All that heard the sound trembled. Many of the orcs cast themselves on their faces and covered their ears with their claws. Back from the deep the echoes came, blast upon blast, as if on every cliff and hill a mighty herald stood. But on the walls men looked up, listening with wonder, for the echoes did not die. Ever the horn blasts wound on among the hills, nearer now and louder they answered one to another, blowing fierce and free. "Helm, Helm," the riders shouted. "Helm is risen and comes back to war. Helm for Theoden, king." And with that shout, the king came. His horse as white as snow, golden was his shield, and his spear was long. At his right hand was Aragorn, Elendil's heir. Behind him rode the lords of the house of Eol the Young. Light sprang in the sky, night departed. Forth, Eolingas, with a cry and a great noise they charged. Down from the gates they roared, over the causeway they swept, and they drove through the hosts of Isengard as a wind among grass. Behind them from the deep came the stern cries of men issuing from the caves, driving forth the enemy. Out poured all the men that were left upon the rock, and ever the sound of blowing horns echoed in the hills. On they rode, the king and his companions. Captains and champions fell or fled before them. Neither orc nor man withstood them. Their backs were to the swords and spears of the riders, and their faces to the valley. They cried and wailed, for fear and great wonder had come upon them with the rising of the day. Thank you. I love that chapter. And there's more. There's a lot more. I'll leave you to read it on your own. It's a fantastic chapter. Anyway, so they ride out. The king and his men ride out. And they come out of the caves. They attack the attackers. And the attackers fall back dismayed. The dawn comes up and they've won. And how can we relate to security? Well, clearly if someone's hacking you, you hack them back. Actually, you know what? That's unethical, illegal. Don't do that. Instead, call an expert. Now, not an expert that's going to hack them. Call an expert to help you defend. So if you're being actively attacked, call someone who has the incident response. Someone who can get into your system, find out what they're doing, and give you ways of kicking them out and investigating the problem. If you're worried about your security, or just in general, which should be everyone who has an application, get a pen tester like me to come and hack your site. Someone who knows what they're doing to find vulnerabilities. If you're trying to configure servers and you don't have a dedicated sysadmin or someone who's really good at it, then hire a dedicated sysadmin for a day or two. Get someone to come in and check your systems. You need an expert. You need someone who knows what they're doing, someone who's done it before to give you that expertise and tell you what you're doing wrong and how to fix it. Because sometimes you need that help. You don't know everything. That is something as developers we need to expect to know, is that we don't know everything. So sometimes you do need an expert. And when it comes to security, unless you're a security person, call in someone who can help you. Alrighty, so this is all the things we covered, all 11, if anyone wants to take photos of the list. From the top, we've got use trusted infrastructure, start with secure defaults, apply updates and patches, keep reliable backups to incident response plans, implement rate limiting and DDoS protection, require multi-factor auth, require authentication, use monitoring, you need monitoring and logging, protect admin maintenance tools, implement lockdown tools, call an expert. Pretty good list. All right, thank you very much. Michael's missing, all right. There he is.
He arrives, never early nor late, but precisely when he means to.
Nice work.
That was good, I like that. So I'm not the friend that you need to forgive for not having read or seen The Lord of the Rings, but there is someone out there. Someone asked about the shoes, or lack thereof. This is
What was that, sorry?
Someone asked about your lack of shoes.
Oh, yes. I live in Brisbane. This is standard Brisbane uniform all year round. And my kids go to a school that is shoes optional, so shoes are pretty optional in my family. I wish I was. I really wish I was.
Why do you think there are so many people obsessed with Lord of the Rings in tech, and do you play D&D?
I've never had the opportunity to play D&D, but I know. I've missed out. I really wish I had.
He's too busy reading those tomes.
I'm up for it. I don't know. I mean, Lord of the Rings, I don't know. I guess there's a lot of people in tech that love fantasy and sci-fi and that sort of thing, and Lord of the Rings really speaks to all of that. So.
Yeah, cool. What is, this will be the last one, what is your version of holding the gate when you have a production issue at 2 a.m?
My version of what, sorry?
Holding the gate.
Holding the gate, production at 2 a.m. And again, I would go back to having the incident response plan. You know, if something is going wrong at 2 a.m, you need something to refer to. Otherwise, you're just trying to make it up when you're tired, which is never going to end well. You're always going to forget something. But if you've written out your plan and you know what to do, then you can go refer to the plan. And you've tested your backups or your different tools that do things so that you can use them as you need them. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Stephen.
Awesome. Thank you.